live on Microsoft? With that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please stand for the invocation led by Mr. Mason Howard and our pledges, pledge of allegiance, led by Mr. Terry.
Father, we thank you for just another opportunity to come and to gather, Lord, as a board and as a district to deal with the business of the district. God, I pray that you would just have your hand upon all of our workings tonight. God, that you would guide, lead, direct each one of us, Father, just to make the right decisions. God, I pray that you would just give us wisdom. Father, with that wisdom, I pray for understanding. God, help us just to be the leaders that you have desired for us to be. God, I pray for our children. Lord, be with them as they are out for the summer. God, keep them safe, keep them healthy. Father, watch over all of our workers, God, our teachers who are off. Father, all of our administrators, Father, just everyone who works within our district. I pray that you would have your hand upon them. Father, just help us to be pleasing to you. In your Son's precious and holy name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
At this time, in accordance with DDB Legal, we will ask Mr. Dan Schaefer to administer the oath of office to our newly elected trustees, Mr. Mason Howard, Mr. Scott Schwartner, and Mr. George Sullivan.
All right. You three gentlemen can stand on that side, up on the elevation. That way we can see eye to eye. Be here all week. If you will, repeat after me. I'm doing this as the official notary of the district. You will repeat as I will pause periodically for you to repeat. So I state your name, do solemnly swear.
I, Mason Howard, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of trustee of the Brazosport Municipal District of the state of Texas.
that I faithfully execute the duties of the office of trustee of the Brazosport Independent School District of the state of Texas,
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Howard, Mr. Schwartner, and Mr. Sullivan. Please take your. It's not a split. Now, on to our agenda, public hearing. We will now ask Mrs. Denise Babb to conduct a public hearing on the federally funded programs for the 2014-2015 program year. This is a public hearing, so audience participation is invited at the conclusion of the presentation.
I'm pleased to present to the board the summary of the ISD Special Education federal funding. In accordance with board policy PHPA legal, I will present a summary of Part D of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act grant, which provides service supports for students with special needs. Under the Individuals with Disability Education Act, or IDEA, special education federal funds are distributed to the ISD through two state grant programs. Part B of the IDEA grant, the main program, authorizes grants to state and local education agencies to offset part of the cost of the special education programming for children ages 3 to 21. Also, the grant targets supplemental services for children ages 3 to 5. The Special Education Department exists to support services by federal and state law. What services do our federal funds support? In planning our budget this year, we concentrated on the services required by federal and state law, our district's strategic plan, and our department's mission. The ISD Special Education Department's organizational structure aligns with the ISD strategic plan for providing high-quality instruction. The vision of the Special Education Department is to provide collaborative support services in an environment that embraces all learners to successfully achieve their full potential. This diagram illustrates all areas in which we provide support. We provide active support and staff members to assist with instructional and behavioral interventions in an effort to prevent special education when possible. We provide assessment staff members for the diagnosis and ongoing assessment of students with special needs. We equip administrators and other staff members with knowledge of the admission, review, and dismissal process that supports students' needs. We collaborate with all teaching and learning departments to provide high-quality instructional opportunities for all students receiving special education services, focusing on the individualized needs of the student. The services the grant supports include teachers in our PASS programs, which are our programs for students with significant emotional and behavioral needs, special education paraprofessionals within inclusive settings, support services for students with visual, occupational, and physical therapy needs. The funds are used to purchase supplemental instructional supplies, including community-based instruction, life skills curriculum materials and supports, and assistive technology supports. We purchased iPads last year for our speech therapists, and this year we're adding our preschool teachers. These funds also support the Special Services Data Management System, assessment tools and kits, professional staff development, and contracted services, which includes assessments, speech therapists, consultants, and residential placements. Again, our department manages two federal grants, the Idea B federal grant and the Idea B preschool grant. The Idea B grant total allocation for 2013-14 was $2,094,487. We received an additional $987,179 in roll forward funds, making our total allotment for last year $3,081,666. In 2014-15, we are budgeting for an allotment of $2,166,201, with an estimated roll forward total of $712,684, making our maximum entitlement $2,878,885. We anticipate a continued decrease in our dependence on contracted services and our hiring of full-time staff. Last year's salary study increase is enabling us to attract and retain our assessment staff for the coming year. The much smaller grant we received, the Idea B preschool grant, total allocations in 2013-14 was $71,152, which paid for special education preschool programs for children with disabilities certified teachers. And our anticipated allocations for the grant in 2014-15 is $60,000. Are there any questions? Pardon me? Number of students.
I have a question. How important is the recommendation of a teacher in a classroom when she believes, based on her experience and training, that a student needs to be tested for special needs?
That is an excellent question. I'm covering federal budget. Is there anything in particular about the budget in that?
Well, I know the budget has to go specifically to needs of special children or it's returned back. Last year we didn't have enough, I understand. But I have a deep concern because in my question of asking, maybe putting my nose where I don't think it belongs, but at least I was elected to do so. I've had some experiences that probably were some students that should have had special needs were not being given. So how do we avoid that in the future? And I think the first one would be the teachers who are in special needs. or who have normal classes but have the experience and the education to see that there are some students in their in normal classes that need to be tested for special needs.
Well, and that's
So
a part of our training is to provide training to staff members, administrators, to ensure that they have the knowledge that they need in order to make those sound decisions. Denise Gabb, our Federal Programs Director, will now present information about federal programs and Title I. Thank you, Jen. Good evening. In accordance with board policies EHBF legal and EHBD legal and local, and in a continuation of this public hearing, I will present a summary of VISD's Perkins, NCLB, and state compensatory funding. An important aspect of identifying needs and developing strategies to support student learning is to gather stakeholder feedback and buy-in throughout the process. I will provide an opportunity at the conclusion of the report to answer questions from the members of the audience and the board. Carl V. Perkins are federal funds which support our career and technical education, or CTE, programs at both our high schools. Like all federal programs, the money is intended to carry out programs that develop more fully the academic and technical skills of secondary students who elect to enroll in career and technical education programs. And as you can see from this slide, we have actually increased our funds to about to the tune of about $25,000 this year for the 2014-15 school year. The NCLB Consolidated Grant consists of the following. Title I, Part A, is designed to upgrade the overall educational program on a school-wide campus, as well as address any areas identified as missing federal adequately yearly progress performance targets. Title II, Part A, is designed to provide teacher and principal training and recruitment of such positions. Title III is designed to be a supplement to support the educational program for our English language learners. And state compensatory education is designed to close achievement gaps for students who are identified as at risk according to our state's criteria. The district is required to spend 52% of this allotment on direct student support. All of these, as I call pots of money, are intended to be used as supplementary support for our campuses. In other words, if the state mandated, we cannot use Title I or state compensatory funds to pay for the programs. For example, our dyslexia program is state mandated, so we can't use the funds to pay the teacher salaries, but we could use money for the supplementary materials to support the teaching. When I talk about federal funds, I often refer to it as the icing on the cake, meaning it is an addition to what you have to sustain a program. You pay for that icing, but just can't pay for the cake. This graph shows how the largest part of the consolidated grant, Title I, Part A, is divided. Federal law states districts cannot spend more than 30% on administrative costs. So as you see from this grant, the very first thing the district is required to do is to take 1% off the top for our parent involvement activities. It's required. These funds will be redistributed to the campuses on a per pupil allocation. 2% of the funding is to be used for staff to provide coaching and staff development. The maximum of 1% is used for our homeless children who do not attend Title I participating campuses. And the largest portion, as you can see, provides campus per pupil allocations as well as district program support. As most of you may remember, last year we only identified our elementary K through 6 as Title I. This year, we're very excited to report that we have recently identified A.P. Boydell as our newest Title I campus, as they have met the 40% economically disadvantaged requirement. To become a Title I campus, Boydell had to attend required training in order to become a Title I school-wide campus. School-wide funds can be used for all students on their campus. And at this time, Brandon Elementary is the only campus not served with Title I funds in VISD, along with our secondary campuses. Any questions?
Again, this is a public hearing, so audience participation is encouraged.
Go back to that pie chart percentages.
Yes.
The 14% for administrative services, what's in that 14%?
What we look at, we pay for our Title I coordinator, who's Jean May. We pay for our social worker, which is Stacy McCoy. Stacy McCoy directly works with all our homeless families. And then we have also some of our instructional coaches, and this year we want to include bilingual coaches. Because if you remember from our PAR visit, that was a focus that we need to look at is our ELO program. So we definitely want to look at adding that to that.
Okay, so the 14% is really tied to services that support.
District level expenditure.
Right, but it's not like an overhead management of the.
No,
81%.
no.
That's what I'm just trying to clarify.
Yes, okay.
I have a question. Can we go back to the slide that had all the schools on it?
Can we use our microphone?
My question, other than the fact that it's additional funding because it's a Title I school, why are you excited that Boyle is added to the list?
Well, it does provide a lot more opportunities for Boyle. We have 40% economic disadvantage is a high number of students that don't get the same kind of things that normal students get. So this will actually provide support to those teachers and staff, and more importantly, the students and their families. It's like having an extra budget in hand, and that most of their funding is used to provide additional teachers to help with all of the instruction that's needed for these students.
So I have a question then. If you're providing added instruction for the students that need it, when are they getting that? Because they're not staying extra time at school.
Right. It depends on the campus itself. Some of them use it for interventionists on the campus itself. So they'll use it to provide support in the means of an interventionist that would take those students and work with them, or maybe even push in with their classroom. It just depends on what the campus decides to do based on the data that's presented from their state assessment. It's a great opportunity. I know it may, to some seem, well, they're now 40%, but to me, it's more like we're giving that campus the help that they need to meet the needs of our students.
All of our Title I schools are required to have interventions?
No, they're not required. That is a campus-based decision. The campus is required to look at their data, develop a needs assessment, and from that needs assessment, then they look at improvement plans, what they need. So they look at what the data says. So if their areas is difficult in math or in reading, then they want to support it. And that may mean by paying for an additional staff member to come in and work with our students.
Do all of our, I'm asking for something, may I know, do all of our Title I have interventions?
Yes, sir, they do.
Both reading and
Yes, sir, they do.
So, as I understand, the funds are distributed on a per student basis.
Yes, sir. The formula works like this. We take the planning amount that we get from the state. We take off what we need to, for the district set aside, which I mentioned earlier, the 1% for parent involvement, the percentage for staff development for homeless. And then we take that funding, we take the number of economically disadvantaged students at each of those campuses, take that total and divide it into that number. That is our per pupil allotment. And then we take that, multiply it by each campus's economically disadvantaged number, and that comes up with that district, that budget for that campus. Same thing with the parent involvement. I'll take the 1% out, and I'll do the same mathematical equation for that, and that'll get each campus has to spend that money on their parent involvement activities. A big part of Title I is parent involvement.
So our campuses, they have this allotment, this budget,
Yes.
and if they just have to assess the needs of the students
They're
within this
required.
budget.
Right, they're required to assess the needs for the students at their campus needs assessment. Not only for title, for federal, but for state compensatory funds as well.
Within this budget.
In this budget. Well, the Title I budget, they have to do a needs assessment, but also compensatory funds, which is a separate funding that's through local, and that has to also have a needs assessment developed
student require a little more effort. Somehow that has to be worked into the budget.
Again, we're looking at, based off data, that it's not just necessarily state assessment, we're looking at climate need, we're looking at attendance, we're looking at parent participation, all of that's determined in that needs assessment. And from there, the campus decides, where is best to put those funds to serve their students and the things.
There's input from multiple sources as to the needs assessment.
Yes, that's through the campus improvement committee. They should have, all of them should not only have staff members, but they should have parent and community members. All should be involved, very much like our DEIC. We have our CEICs. And they should have community members sitting on them. They should have parents sitting on them. Those are the kinds of things, that's that committee that makes that entire decision. That's correct.
On the title and spending, that was back at the original that the King presented, that's the funding we're talking about. And it looks like the number had gone down, projected to go down from last year to this year.
In mine,
Yeah, I think that's the title one.
that's a special education.
And where's the title one funding?
Well, this was mine, are you talking about, because ours did
The title
project to
one.
go down.
The title one.
Okay.
Title one is yours.
That one. Uh-huh.
Okay, so this is the projection for 14.
This is what we call a planning amount, okay? This is what the state gives us each year, and they just gave it to us last Friday. And then from, I'm sorry, go ahead.
How does that compare to last year's numbers as far as cost levels?
It's actually, it's kind of hard to say that because it's actually, I wasn't here last year, so I don't know exactly what her planning amounts were exactly last year. I'd say it might be a little bit lower, yes, but what happens is on June 30th, we have to submit the application for next year's funding by June 30th. What they do is they take a look at all who's funded, and so there's some actually districts, and there's over 1,100 districts in the state, so they may not decide to use those funds. The state goes back, recalculates all the funding, and then resends that out, so we'll get another planning amount. And that's not even the full amount. We don't receive the maximum entitlement, what we call maximum entitlements, until around January. They usually typically hold back about 10%.
And I guess where I'm going with that is, and I don't know if there's a way to get what we had last year to what we have this year, because now we have one more school that we're going to be funding from that same amount. So
Okay.
while we may have the same amount or a little bit more, a little bit
I
less,
see
we
what- yeah.
now have more mouths at the table.
I can see. Yeah, that pie just actually gets a little smaller is what happens. Now, the good news is the state had waived our AYP and all the federal part of that. And in doing so, we used to have to set aside so much, because some of our schools, we had to set aside money for students that wanted to go from another school to another school. They had a transfer option, and we had to set aside money for transportation. 20% of the total allocation had to be set aside. Yes,
So I guess when we go through the planning amount with the money from the state, I mean, is it gonna take into consideration we have an additional campus?
no, it will not. It gives the same. But the point I was making about that was about 400,000 we had to keep back in reserve and we couldn't use. Now, we can use that money because we have a waiver right now that's still in effect.
But I guess as far as planning for needs and services, we need to take into consideration that we have an additional campus now that we're having to supply the funding for.
And we have, and it really, the amounts that they're receiving are comparable to all the other campuses based on the number of economically disadvantaged students.
Everybody's getting the same amount.
Yes, it varies that per pupil allotment, so they're gonna get.
Each campus is gonna get less because.
No, actually, they actually got a lot more, because of that 400,000 was put back into the.
Okay, so 400,000 is what's saved.
Yes.
Okay, so that, I guess, needs to be taken into consideration as we go through the planning process and see what we need for next year. Because getting excited about getting another school, but not getting any more money for the additional school really doesn't get us anywhere.
I consider it a plus.
Which is not our case. We have, fortunately, we have 400,000.
Yes, that goes back to the kids.
Any other further questions that anybody has? Then it is later in the consent agenda, the administration will recommend the Board of Trustees authorize the teaching and learning department to deploy VISD federal funds to the Department of Campuses and Programs and Services.
So, any questions? I'll now close the public hearing. Next on our agenda, we have awards, achievements, and recognition.
The best part of the evening. Good evening, Superintendent Lufkin, President Mr. Maney, and board members, and our guests. It is always my pleasure to bring the awards and recognitions of our district. This evening, we have wonderful things to do. If board members, you will join me down front. And Mr. Damien, if you will be our representative in the photographs, we would appreciate it. This is good stuff.
I'm doing real good. I was coming around here, I tripled the
At this time, our first recognition will be presented by Ms. Mary Lou Bushaney, the Coordinator of Human Resources, with our May Heartworks winner.
Good evening. It's my honor to present to you the Heartworks recipient for May, Ms. Canester Bland. Ms. Bland is an assistant principal at Lanier Middle School. Ms. Bland received the Heartwork nomination from the Lanier Middle School principal, Ms. Hester. Ms. Hester commended Ms. Bland for sending out the tip of the week to the staff. The tip of the week started out as a Word document, but is transformed into a blog written to encourage and motivate staff. Ms. Hester commented that Ms. Bland has been a wonderful addition to the Lanier staff. Ms. Bland's continuous support of staff gives everyone at Lanier a chance to succeed and to be their best every day. Ms. Bland, please accept this dinner for two from our 4BIC Kids partner, El Chico. And next is Mr. Dan Schaefer, Chief Business and Governmental Affairs Officer.
Thank you. I got Mr. John Craig joining me up here. He's our Director of Transportation and Maintenance. I know you've all heard the various challenges we had at the beginning of the year with transportation, being short of staff. It's a remarkable feat to actually have the lowest number of accidents in how many years? 10 years. 10 years. Like, only 8 reportable incidences since last August. That is truly amazing. Great staff. Truly took safety to an extreme level this year, and we're very proud of them. The second one is an external award. Goes to Renee Shootman, who is currently doing some training. She's a VIC officer driver manager. She was recently selected as the Texas Association of Pupil Transportation, which is their official organization, as the Operations Specialist of the Year. She was nominated by Mr. Craig. This annual state honor is given to an individual who is described as one who has an incredible work ethic, drive, and morale compass to make progress, and Shootman certainly possesses all these traits. As a matter of fact, Renee, she could not be here this evening because she's teaching a class. Mr. Craig is here to accept the certificate on behalf of Renee.
Yeah, that's good.
Renee is for you.
Well, it is my honor to recognize our very own Daniel Schaefer. We all know Mr. Schaefer is an outstanding outstanding and knowledgeable leader in BISD. Therefore, it should be no surprise to hear that others throughout our state have recognized his talents. Recently, Dan was selected to serve on the Lone Star Investment Pool Advisory Board, which is a subsidiary of TASB. He is one of only 6 advisory board members representing education that were selected to serve in this capacity. We are thrilled to have so many amazing and talented leaders in BISD, and I know you will want to join me in congratulating Mr. Schaefer on his first year.
Honors teachers for outstanding contributions in math and science. This year, the Phillips 66 Award recipients are Patricia Leal, math from Brazosport High School. In addition, Miss Jana Dalton from Brazosport High School. Is a cross-curricular, team-based, rigorous science competition that emphasizes problem-solving and hands-on constructivist learning practices. The competition consists of 28 different events or tests over all facets of science, where students work as partners and can compete in as few or as many as an event each hour based on ability and desire. Science Olympiad students prepare all year before and after school, and it requires a vast amount of commitment, knowledge, and skill. BIC would like to congratulate the Science Olympiad team from Lake Jackson Intermediate and coaches for placing 10th at the state competition and recognize the following team members. Colin Thompson, 8th grade. Aria Stefan, 8th grade. Jenna Sandifer, 7th grade. Michael Rudolph, 8th grade. Jenny Rudolph, 8th grade. Maggie Wang, 7th grade. Claire Thompson, 7th grade. And Jeffrey Sims, 8th grade.
this time, in accordance with BED local, the board will provide an audience of individuals who have signed up prior to the meeting to address the board. Tonight, we do not have any requests to comment to the board, so we will move on to the next item on our agenda. The next on the agenda is executive session. Executive session may be called for the purposes permitted by the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551.001 through 551.146, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, Section 551.074, personnel matters, appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, dismissal, complaint. We will return shortly. We will now reconvene from executive session. We will now reconvene from executive session. The time is 8 p.m. I will now turn it over to Dr. Alaska to discuss our consent items.
I have something I want to say first, is I've enjoyed being on the board. I've decided to resign. It's not for health reasons. It's for personal reasons. I'm resigning tonight. And I wish the board the best.
Well, I don't know where to go with that one, but I think that we can all agree that Mr. Frizzell has been a great addition to our school board, and we really appreciate his service. As you can tell by the looks on the board and myself's face, that's quite the surprise for us. And so there is a process that the board will need to go through at a later time related to that matter, and we will discuss that at a later time. We will move on with the consent agenda at this time, if that's okay with Vice President.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Our consent agenda, of course, is filled with a lot of decisions and opportunities in our district this evening, and I'm excited to share a few of these with you tonight. First, under purchases exceeding $25,000, you'll see a number of items related to our 2012 bond and summer projects. From roofing to security to flooring to serving lines to technology, we are continuing to upgrade our facilities to reach our goal of state-of-the-art districts in BISD, state-of-the-art facilities and schools in BISD. We are also planning to pilot a phonics program in 4 campuses next year, including Brandon, Griffith, Ogg, and Boydell, which we're very excited about. And then depending on the pilot, the goal would be to implement at all elementaries the following year. Under item E, you will find the sale of a delinquent tax property, include for the offer price of $400, followed by the federal funds in items F and G, as previously discussed in the public hearing. Also, in our consent agenda, I want to highlight our request to submit a low attendance waiver for May 28th. We are eligible for a waiver when the attendance falls 10% below the prior year's attendance. Due to the excessive rains, our attendance was 11.9% below the prior year on this day. Student attendance, as you know, is a key factor in our annual funding calculations, which is why we are requesting a waiver. Under item I, you will find a recommendation for the superintendent to employ professional personnel without board approval until August. This recommendation has been made and approved for a number of years to allow for timely hiring decisions and assurance of top quality candidates. I, of course, will continue to notify the board of any decisions made and will bring those in close timing of a meeting to the board for consideration. This concludes my report on the consent agenda, and I'll turn the meeting back over to Vice President Duyon at this time.
I think I remember. hiring a principal at Elizabeth Nay Elementary. Oh, I'm sorry, that's actually, apologize. Budget amendments.
And the purchases exceeding $25,000.
Any others? Comments?
I'll
Okay.
make a motion that we approve consent order.
All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Unanimous. The first action item is the election of board officers for the 2014-2015 school year. In accordance with policy BDAA local, the board must elect a president, vice president, secretary, and assistant secretary for a term of 1 year. President, do I have a motion for board president? I would like to make a motion to nominate Jerry Atkins as board president. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of Jerry Atkins for board president, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Three to three. Did you vote, Drew? Entertain another one? Is there do I have a second motion for board president?
Trying to remember.
I'm asking for another nomination.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, Mr. Solar, I nominate Mr. Solar.
Okay, is there a second?
Second nomination. I second.
Got a second by Mr. Sullivan. Discussion? All in favor of George Sullivan for board president, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Two. Direct, two. Opposed? Aye. Okay. Four. Motion fails. Two. Four. Do I have a motion for a nomination for president? I nominate myself. Second. Motion made. Discussion? All in favor of Ron Damian for board president, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
How many? Five. Opposed? Motion carries. I'm getting used to doing that. Vice President, do I have a motion for board vice president? I make a nomination for Jerry Atkins for board vice president. Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of Jerry Atkins, board vice president, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
How many? Four? Four? Opposed? Passes. 42. Motion carried. Secretary, do I have a motion for board secretary?
Nominate Mr. Howard as board secretary.
Discussion? Motion is seconded by Mr. Sullivan. Discussion? All in favor of Mason Howard for board secretary, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Opposed? I'm sorry. Assistant secretary, do I have a motion for board assistant secretary? I'd like to nominate George Sullivan, board assistant secretary. Second. Discussion? All in favor of George Sullivan, board assistant secretary, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
At this time, we'll sort of remain out of the same seats.
So our last, hiring of board principal, next agenda item is hiring of the principal for Gladys Polk Elementary.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. After an extensive interview process and collecting campus and community feedback, I'd like to present the principal position recommendation for Gladys Polk Elementary School. In accordance with board policy DC Local, it is my pleasure to give you a recommendation for the principal of Gladys Polk. The administration recommends Sarah Fulton for the employment of principal at Gladys Polk Elementary.
I move to approve the recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion, second, for Tara Fulton, principal of Gladys Polk Elementary. All in favor? No discussion? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Next on the agenda is the hiring of principal of Elizabeth May Elementary.
Again, after an extensive interview process and collection of campus and community feedback, I'd like to present the principal position recommendation for Elizabeth Ney Elementary School. In accordance with board policy DC Local, it's my pleasure to give a recommendation to you for principal of Elizabeth Ney. The administration recommends Randy Winchie for the employment of principal of Elizabeth Ney Elementary.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Atkins, second by Mr. Silver. All in favor? Now, any discussion? Discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next on the agenda is the hiring of principal of Brazos Fort High School.
Lastly, and certainly not leastly, after an extensive interview process and collecting campus and community feedback, I'd like to present the principal position recommendation for Brazos Fort High School. In accordance with board policy DC Local, it is my pleasure to give a recommendation to you for principal of Brazos Fort High School. The administration recommends Jennifer Gonzalez for the employment of principal of Brazos Fort High School.
I move we accept the recommendation.
Second. Motion by Mr. Howard, second by Mr. Evans. Any discussion? All in favor, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Congratulations, Mr. Next on the agenda is consideration for termination of the employment contract of consider termination of the employment contract of Cherry Lane and related actions.
Okay. In accordance with Board Policy DFBA Legal, the following recommendation is necessary due to contract abandonment. Board members, on behalf of the Brazosport ISD administration, the superintendent recommends the termination of Cherry Lane's term contract for the reasons outlined in executive session, which include contract abandonment. It further recommends that the superintendent be authorized to notify Ms. Lane of this board's action.
I move that the board approve the recommendation of the superintendent to terminate Cherry Lane's term contract for the reasons outlined in executive session. That the superintendent be authorized to notify Ms. Lane of this board's actions.
Second. Motion by Mr. Howard and a second by Mr. Atkins. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is district compensation plan and salary adjustments for 2014.
Thank you. Good evening. In accordance with Board Policy DEA Local and Strategic Plan Objective 2, all staff will contribute to organizational excellence. It is my pleasure to present the Brazosport ISD Comprehensive Compensation Plan and Salary Adjustments for 2014-15. You've been previously provided an electronic copy of the compensation plan for 2014-15 on your board site. Brazosport ISD pay systems are designed and managed for the following purposes: provide competitive pay to attract and retain highly qualified personnel, provide internal pay equity for job responsibility, reward continued service to the district, and manage payroll expenses effectively. As you can see here, this is some information regarding what's happening in our state. Statewide anticipated change for 2014-2015 is about a 2.3% increase. Region 4 districts are anticipating about a 2.6 increase on average. And that's with 44% of the districts giving a 3% increase, 24% giving a 2% increase, and the remaining districts giving between a 1 to 5% increase. Okay, squint your eyes a little bit further. Upon review of TASB's findings, several options were generated to evaluate the needs of the district. Salaries and stipends allow BISD to recruit and retain quality staff. I'd like for you to take a look at options A, B, C, and D. They're very similar in nature for the most part. I will go ahead and describe each option. Option A provides for a 3% increase with adjustments to transportation pay, additional stipends, and increased substitute pay. Option B provides for a 3% increase, adjustments to transportation pay, a market adjustment to teachers years 11 to 24, additional stipends, and increased substitute pay. Option C provides a 4% increase, adjustments to transportation pay, additional stipends, and increased substitute pay. Option D provides a 4% increase, adjustments to transportation pay, a market adjustment to teachers years 11 to 24, additional stipends, and increased sub pay. At the bottom of the chart, you can see the cost to the district for each consideration. These are payroll costs that do not factor in the percentage of TRS contribution and insurance. Just to point out, the major differences, A and B is a 3%, C and D is a 4%. Here you have consideration for market adjustments to 11 to 24. We have bus driver adjustments to help in those areas that are difficult. And then these are our additional across-the-board recommendations for stipend, additional stipends, increase in substitute to make those rates more competitive as we see the needs in that area, and also campus webmasters because of the increased challenges for those staff doing the additional time and effort on that. So, the administration recommends that the board approve the 2014-15 compensation plan, including option C, which includes a 4% of market value increase for teachers, which equates to $2,050 for all full-time teachers, and a 4% midpoint increase for all other employees, adjustments to transportation, additional stipends as indicated, and an increase in substitute pay. I'd be happy to answer questions at this time.
Give me in dollars what the adjustment to transportation pay would be.
Projected increase in dollars with those adjustments would be $11,425. That's going to go across multiple employees. The bus drivers. It's an increase in their hourly rate. It's been an area of challenge for us this year, so we feel like the increase will secure those positions, even though Mr. Gregg's done an outstanding job.
So it's a 4% plus another 30 cents per driver, so it is.
An additional, okay, let's see. Yes, plus an additional 30%, 30 cents. Yes, that's what it would take to get those.
So 4% midpoint adjustment plus another 30 cents.
Plus 30 cents. If we just did a recommended 4%, it still would have a level that we don't feel can secure those positions. Real challenging right now to fill this. Okay.
So when are all of our other local districts gonna come out with their
Oh,
pay raise?
Angleton will be tomorrow, as soon as we finish ours, I'm sure. They wait on us. The recommendation here for 4%, based on the projections of being 2.6 in the area, it's gonna get us, you know, higher up than most districts are going. I think you're gonna see a typical 3% out of most districts. There are a few aggressive districts in the Houston area that have gone up to 5.
We kinda thought we were ahead of the curve last year, only to be.
Three is pretty standard, to be straight forward with you. 3 is pretty standard. 4 is considered a much more aggressive line. 5's to the point where you are gonna end up in a hole, unfortunately, a lot of times because you've gone too far. But that's why the 4% recommendation is coming to you tonight.
I just don't wanna read in the paper now that, everybody else is up just by $100. I know it's-
Some
I know it's a
districts
risk.
tend to do.
It's a risk.
Some districts do tend to watch and wait and go so far as, the challenge with that is if they wait too long, then all the recruiting and hiring has already taken place. So it's definitely a timing
Okay.
issue. So you may see it, I can't guarantee you won't.
On the adjustment to the market value, 11 through 24 years, it's approximately 360 teachers. If we were to look at the teachers that are 24 plus, how many teachers approximately would that be?
Over 24 years? I'd have to give you an estimate. I would ballpark over 24 years would be less than 100 teachers, I would guess, probably close to 100 teachers. But that, I mean, that's a guess. It's starting to think of people I know at this point.
Because one of the things, the feedback I got from some teachers, you know, we try to do the right things, like with the longevity stipend, and we made 1/5 of the teachers who got it happy, and we kind of ticked off the other 4/5. So this is one of those, you know, we're gonna make teachers 11 through 24 very happy, and now we got teachers on the opposite ends of the spectrum outside of that window that are not necessarily gonna be happy.
The hopes with this recommendation, which, and you may recall this in the past, from my knowledge of being here, we haven't done a 4%. I don't know if anybody remembers ever in our district done 4%. So in doing a recommendation for 4%, we're actually moving everyone closer to market value, even though we haven't done an adjustment, because the recommendation is item C. If we haven't done an adjustment, and still the impact of that 4% will move those, and we'll move some above market, and that's another strength is we're projecting our starting salary will be above market.
So you're recommending C, which does not include the adjustment?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
What will this make our starting pay?
47.7, let me make sure I'm. I can pull it out. No, it's extremely important. It's, in your packet, it would be 48,250 with a 4% increase. So over 48, which is a very nice number for us in recruiting.
This 4% is, like, last year we had this, kind of the difference in percentages throughout the step. And now we're providing a more consistent. And it also will cover what we did last year with regarding the Christmas bonus. Healthcare allowance, yes.
Yeah.
We may not be doing that again, because we may not be doing that again this year. I mean, it's kind of a allotment. So this would help cover that.
Yes. Yes. It would. And that's an annual decision.
So I'm going to ask, can the district support long-term a 4% raise this year and cover that in subsequent years?
14 and 15 won't look so good. Revenues aren't coming in higher, and we'll discuss it a little bit. But I sent out an attachment today that helps explain the delays in the value growth will come into play even more, I guess, at a greater pace because the value of a particular plant came in 18% higher. It's just the startup of it occurred after January 1st versus before January 1st. So if a plant is considered construction in progress, it's valued at half of the value, half of the actual value. So $1 isn't worth $1. It was kind of news to me, but $1 was only worth 50 cents. But it was a unique concept, but it means it wasn't an operation. But what happens going into 15, 16, that additional value growth will generate about $5 million more of revenue. Looking at what we're projecting for a loss next year, we would have enough money to cover that. In the presentation this evening and later, it'll be basically showing it'll be pretty tight next year, real tight. Subsequent year, we'll be about break even, and then we'll, depending on legislative action, we'll determine what additional we might be able to provide for subsequent years. This might, if nothing happens, we might be where we're at. We'll just have to reevaluate it, but we'll have enough to cover this action based on projected revenue. It's just any further enhancement to compensation will be determined based on additional revenue provided by legislative action or additional growth or additional students. There's all the variable factors, but based on projections, we should be fine. And luckily, we have enough fund balance to help cushion the first year blow. It's reason you have it. You never know what may or may not occur in this case. So we're in a good shape financially to be able to handle 1 year of this, knowing that the revenues will be there the subsequent year.
3 years ago,
trying to see where the janitors and the, food service are in.
Up on the screen, they're not on the screen. They are, the 4%, they will be also included in the 4%.
They're getting a raise.
Absolutely, yes, sir. All employees will get a 4% of their employee.
How much is insurance going up?
We got some information today.
We did receive some numbers finally. TRS Active Care converted from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Aetna. And the employee-only coverage for TRS-1, depending on the level of coverage, TRS-1 stayed flat for employee-only and employee children. It did go up for employee spouse and employee family. So it just depends on your coverage. We're still looking at it, see what the impact will be. Like I said, we just got it today. But it's not as drastic of an increase that we've seen in years past, which was ridiculous. But it is a slight increase for some of the levels, but flat for some others. So
For the most part, increase will show up on their check.
yeah, that's always a good thing. You got a raise.
It's the same. Okay.
On the campus webmasters, do we currently have those in positions now? I see those. Top eight. So this is pretty nice, looks like. In addition, well, I'm the one that asked to look at the 15 to 25, I guess 11, 24. So even though we've got this 4%, that's still there's still going to be a little low, right? Yes, sir. And basically, that's why we did the compensation survey to make sure that we were being competitive. I think, Mr. Sullivan, that the 25-year and up, I think they're probably over the median. Is that correct?
They're right at. They're with 98 to 100%, depending on the employee. And we have some employees that are still on career ladder that actually put them above market significantly.
I can't remember the number. I asked you that last week. You told me what it was. I can't remember. But there are still some of them.
Yes, more than I thought, actually.
Yeah. Well, I guess I have a concern of not catching them up, but looking at the increase we have, still take a look at it pretty close. I don't like B, the 3%. I think 4% is where we need to go. I'm a little concerned on the option D with that amount, so anybody else. But I think this points out we still need to do the yearly compensation survey. So that was something that has been discussed about doing it, but we have to do that every year at this point. So that's all I have. Thanks.
We have a recommendation.
I'm gonna go with accept option C.
Second. We have a second motion made by Mr. Silvers and seconded by Mr. Schwartner. Any discussion?
I just have a comment. 3 years ago, we were not able to give any compensation, so it's a very nice change to be able not to offer just a token raise, but I would say a competitive type of raise. It's a lot better than when I got elected the first time.
That was a lot better.
That was a lot.
I agree.
That was a lot.
I'd like to echo that, but I like that it helps their retirement.
I'd like to thank Mr. Schaefer for handling my money. No bonus, no bonus.
He'll generate more to spend it.
We have a motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. 99, including local policy.
Mine is not near as exciting and most likely won't draw applause in its policy. But in alignment with board policy, BF Local, I'm pleased to present to you this evening Policy Update 99 and one other local policy revision. Update 99 is the second post-legislative update from TASB and includes 8 local policy revisions for board consideration. Our first policy revision is at BDD Local and is a minor change. This revision adds the board president to the list of those authorized to consult legal counsel on district matters, which is already the practice of our district. This just now places it in policy. At BDD Local, related to administrative regulations, changes are recommended to clarify that the superintendent must resolve any discrepancies between the regulations and policy. It also deletes the requirement that an official copy must be maintained in the superintendent's office, since our regulations are now stored electronically on our website. The next policy, CFEA, is being recommended for deletion, since several of the items in optional deductions are now legally required and is in legal policy. All others are recommended to be placed in a regulation by TASB. CK Local is being revised for the purpose of streamlining the policy related to our risk management program, shifting to governance language instead of operational details, since safety programs have become much more comprehensive in recent years. Next, DAC Local is being recommended for deletion. This policy was originally required by Civil Order 5281, which is no longer applicable to our district. The State Board of Education rules have changed regarding credit by examination without prior instruction. Therefore, policy EHDC is being streamlined to simply note required compliance with the new rules, which were outlined in the revised legal policy EHDC. FFF Local is our next policy and is being recommended for deletion, since the content is now covered in CK Local related to risk management as previously discussed. The final Update 99 local policy revision is at FFH and adds gender-based harassment to the list of what is reported to the Title IX coordinator, which is Mr. Danny Massey. This revision also makes a number of changes detailing the relationship between school districts and law enforcement agencies during a criminal investigation. The new language provides the district with some flexibility on our investigation timelines when law enforcement is conducting an investigation and the district investigation risk impeding. We next have one local policy we are required to annually review and revise as needed, which is our wellness policy, FFA. There are only minor changes being recommended by the Student Health Advisory Council requiring compliance with the USDA regulations due to the elimination of the Texas Department of Agriculture school nutrition policy. Also, some of the specificity was removed to align with governance language. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of our district administrators in reviewing all of the policy revisions from TASB, in addition to working diligently to ensure our local policies reflect the practices of our district. It is my recommendation that the board accept these local policies, additions and revisions and deletions as presented.
We have a recommendation.
I'll make a motion that we, board update 99, study all those policies and read.
We have a motion made and seconded, made by Mr. Atkins and seconded by Mr. Sullivan. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Next, on the agenda is consideration of a campus department budget carousel.
Yeah, what I'd like to do or propose is kind of a change to the way we review the budget. I mean, Dan does a great job putting together this massive spreadsheet with all these numbers and all these accounts. But just looking at that, I want to make sure that we know that the campuses and departments have what they need to get the job done that we're holding them accountable for. So instead of just having a workshop where we're reviewing the spreadsheet and asking questions, I'd like to propose that we actually have kind of a carousel format where we can talk to the principals and department heads and actually ask them what was in their budget, how did they build it, what were the considerations. A lot of the campuses have campus improvement plans. Does that budget reflect the needs of that campus improvement plan? And then also really kind of looking to raise the bar. What does that campus need or that department need to excel to the next level that's not in the budget? So we as a board can really have an idea of the big picture of what the needs are and what the future of this district is before we make a decision on a 90-something $million budget. You know, just looking at a spreadsheet and asking Dan questions, I don't have the same warm and fuzzy as I would get if I was actually face-to-face talking to the person that we're going to hold accountable for spending that money. And I think it's a good opportunity to build rapport and dialogue between the board and the campus principals and department heads. So that's kind of the gist of the proposal. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Well, let me add to that, because I have that same concern. I want to hear from the principal as to what her needs are with input from the teachers and other department heads. To put it very simply, that's what I want to hear also. I want to hear from the people on the ground who are working in that department what their needs are. I said that last year. I think one teacher just looked at me and she kind of just smiled. I just have this concern. I don't want teachers to put money out of their pockets to conduct their classes. I want that stopped. And I don't know unless you tell us if you're still putting money out of your pocket, because I think it should not happen, and I certainly don't want it to happen.
I guess I'm wondering there's a process by which campuses develop a budget.
You guys, you mind going through the budget process so that I can be fully aware of the timeline? I know there are some goals and visioning happening in January, February. You guys go from a board level and then taking down to the campuses. I know there's campus improvement plans that we all have access to during after completed.
It starts with the guiding principles, which are distributed. Actually, start with a calendar, which this year we did modify the calendar to more align with the needs assessment and budget development. Before it wasn't aligned really well. We had budget development and then we had needs assessment. Just didn't seem to match up. So it's still not perfect, but it's best we could do based on the timing of when things are due. And so now the needs assessments are done on a preliminary basis. Obviously, campuses are aware of what the needs are, and so they build their budget based on that, and then they finalize their needs assessment shortly after their budget is submitted. And their budget is developed based on campus level staff, their CEIC, Campus Education Improvement Committee. And some of them have a separate budgeting, bigger campuses have a separate budgeting area. That's what they focus on instead of combining it with another meeting. And so we've visited every campus this year to help them through this new process of zero-based budgeting. Because if you don't ask for it this year, you don't get it. And so it really helped us to have a better understanding what they're spending their money on from a needs standpoint, how that does align with their needs assessment. Because in the past, it was the same as last year model. I call it the Sally model. Whatever money you got last year, unless we changed allocation, you got the same money next year. And it didn't provide the opportunity to stoke the conversations of what are the needs and how will it be addressed with the budget. It was just more of a compliance type activity of we have to get our budget in, here's what we had last year, if we're giving us 5% more, we'll add 5% to each line item. And really sit down and go through the various needs of each individual student really takes time, which is why we delayed the information being due back another month. So we feel the process is a lot better. It provides us with some information. We've got a lot of positive feedback from the campuses. And I think based on our understanding, especially with individual departments, I think Danny can attest to this. He got to sit through this twice, one with fine arts and one with athletics. So even at that level, those departments are having to sit down and hash out every single thing they're wanting to do. And ultimately, those areas, as you'll see in the presentation, are costing more. You know, the actual needs are showing up as greater. As far as the campuses are concerned, you know, I'm having to rely on what the campuses are doing at their level. I don't want to micromanage what they need. I'm not going to tell them what they need. And we don't know unless they submit it, which is why we wanted to provide them an opportunity that if your allocation that were provided last year plus the 5% we've added this year isn't enough, you have a mechanism for reporting that. You know, what is that? So we've set up an online form for them through Google that if there is a additional need, that they still have to go through their principal, obviously, because they're the ultimate say what happens on their campus. So if they go to the principal and say, okay, we're still short based on our campus level committee saying that, okay, we've identified, we've prioritized, and we don't have enough money to cover this, we still think it's important, we need to submit this for cabinet level review, which gets put on a request Google form that we will then provide, analyze, prioritize, discuss back with the campus, how can we address this need, you know, is it something that we needed, you know, so that we have a better understanding, because before we want to give any additional money to a single campus, obviously that creates a challenge if it's inequitable among the other campuses, because we do everything on a per student allotment. But if it's an isolated need saying, okay, certain thing on this campus, it's an isolated, the other campus has been addressed through either the new campus or this is an older campus, so it's going to have a little more need in certain areas. It hasn't had an update in a while. We might have to address those individually. But what we're trying to do is make an equitable allotment for each campus per student so that we can show, because from a DEA requirement, we can't supplant. We can't spend more money. Let's say if we have these title campuses, we can't spend more money on one campus that gets title funds, or doesn't get title funds, and compare that to the campus that does get title funds because they consider that supplanting. So we have to be real careful on the equity levels of each campus. And you know, overall, our goal is to provide them what they need, they have to tell us what they need. And I think this year we've really done made a drastic change in that effort to encourage, promote as much as we can. We've been out at every campus, going through each of these committee meetings, and just trying to say, hey, you know, we want to know. If we don't know, we'll never get funded. Obviously, your campus is the decision maker for your campus. And if that principal decides, yes, we need to move forward based on recommendation of their campus improvement committee, then the request will be submitted. So that was a long answer for the process, but I think it's a drastically improved. I think we're trying to do everything we can to make sure we understand what the needs are, because ultimately we have to explain it to the board. And before we put forth that additional money, we want to make sure it's value added. You know, we want to make sure it's consistent with what we're trying to accomplish throughout the district. And I'm with you. I don't like spending my own personal money on stuff for work. And I don't think teachers really should. I mean, like I said, if we don't know about it, then it'll never get funded. But fortunately, I think we have the opportunity now to increase their budget allocations. Kind of going into our presentation later, but it's about 5% increase. Plus, we're making adjustments for smaller campus adjustments, because we know that smaller campuses don't have quite the economy of scale for a number of students, so their cost per student might be a little higher. So we've actually increased the smaller campuses per student number a little bit more to help accommodate those baseline costs that no matter if you have 1,000 students or 200 students, you have some baseline costs you have to cover no matter what. And so we've made some adjustments there to help accommodate the, I guess, smaller individualized campuses. So that, and we haven't had additional requests above and beyond. You know, and visiting with the principals, the submissions are due, and we're currently looking at we set up the 5% additional, and now what we're doing is going back and looking to see what their individual requests were. It's making sure it ties back in. So is their individual request match what what the allocation is? If it's not, why don't you have enough requests? You know, if your request not adequate, do you not need that much money? You know, what's the deal? We've heard you're short so many times. So
Let me interrupt you, and I apologize.
please do.
Before I
Just keep talking.
No. I heard a phrase, and I want to be sure that that I understand what I heard. One is it possible that a Title I school gets more money than it needs? Does that happen?
No, it's all based on needs assessment. What I was saying is that there are some.
Long my answer. Okay.
All right. I just wanted to explain, there are some districts in the past that apparently, if a title campus was receiving that supplemental money, they would reduce the amount of local money they were giving that campus. So bottom line, that campus wasn't getting any more money. They were supplementing or supplanting the local effort.
That was the other question.
Yes.
Thank you.
I think you kind of hit it. I mean, these campuses have done a lot of great work to assess their needs and try to build a budget to meet those needs. And I'd have a warm or fuzzy approving the overall budget if I could hear that and ask that question than reviewing your 40-page spreadsheet where I won't necessarily get that same information.
And I guess we're having the campus carousel this evening, discussing campus needs assessment.
Yeah, all of their campus needs assessments are in the plan for learning, or I can print them out and share with you their comprehensive needs assessment.
And their budget.
And their budget.
Being that before we do that, I would, if the entire board would like it, okay, we'll take action. If it's not the entire board, then maybe it's something we'll take.
Just logistically, just so for consideration as well as if we were to do this during the summer months of June and July, a lot of our principals are off contract during that time period, and I'm sure they'd be happy to cancel their vacations to Florida to for carousel. But I do, that is something to consider, so it may require that it take place more in August when they come back, which again is a challenging time when you're trying to open school. So timing is maybe a challenge, just something to consider.
We have a request on the addition of.
I have a couple comments. One, thanks for the increase in the supplies, because that's what I put in my budget request, and so that was, because I know we increased it last year, and then I found out later that we had cut it much more than we increased it back, so that was kind of interesting.
We cut 15% over a 2-year period. We added back 10%. We're at that 7.5 this year plus adjustments where it's on.
Well, from my perspective, the campus personnel have the best knowledge of what they need. You know, I don't really need to oversee them doing that. Zero-based budgeting, I know that's a difficult process. I think that makes you look at everything. I do know that. And so, you know, you shouldn't miss it. And so, you know, I think each campus determines the needs, and, you know, I trust the professional staff that we have. So I don't think it's a board responsibility to review the details of each campus, but I don't think, you know, first of all, I don't know if we have capabilities. Second of all, there's more time that they have to put in to the presentation. So I think that we as a board can trust our principals and assistant principals and the committees that they have to come up with the budget, and we should be happy with that.
Just one more question on the plan needs assessment that each campus does. That includes budgeted items in that piece as well?
It's in their campus improvement plan. They have to note how much the cost associated with each of those items, and then they have to include their federal and compensatory
I knew that, but I participated in the Nebraska one. I didn't get to the final stage, but I know that was part of it, but I didn't know if that was in the final document that we do have access to.
Yes.
We have a request, the addition of board's budget review process to include a presentation of principals and department leaders.
so I won't make a motion.
All right. Thank you. No motion made on that agenda. The next agenda item is consideration of items pulled from consent agenda. And we had consent agenda items C and D, which were budget amendments and purchases exceeding $25,000. We'll go first with the budget amendments. Is there discussion?
Yeah, I just had two questions. The extra duty pay for curriculum writing. We have a curriculum, so why are we having to write curriculum? Just explain the difference between.
We're looking at lesson plans that they can distribute and we are in the process of making to tweak them so we can utilize them as long as our own lesson.
Okay, so it's really more around the lesson plans, not really around the curriculum. Okay. And the other one, contract services, energy efficiency, $203,000.
Right, that is the Schneider Electric and synergistic payments. We budgeted for it in the utilities line and then reallocated once we determined the amount of the savings. So it's a shared savings amount for synergistic and then a recurring amount for ongoing, it's a required payment for ongoing monitoring of the Schneider Electric project. It's the only way they guarantee the savings. They require annual monitoring, actually monthly monitoring of, make sure we're still operating within range per the contract.
So we're paying Snyder 200.
Snyder's 105. Okay. The rest of it is synergistic.
Okay, so that's just basically to monitor all of the energy savings.
105 is to monitor that, this, to ensure that we are in compliance with the contract that was established for the energy savings program for Schneider, and then synergistic is a percentage based on the amount of utilities savings. So that number is a percentage of the savings that we generate.
Okay, is this 204,000 significantly less than the amount of money we saved in energy?
Oh, yeah. The synergistic portion is 45% share for 5 years. The Schneider Electric, which say, the guaranteed savings is $600,000 a year. We've generated, I have to get the spreadsheet out again, I believe it was upwards of $1 million in savings. We exceeded the targets easily. And in fact, one of the considerations that some districts do is they keep it's called the PASS program, which is Schneider's monitoring service, for 3 years to make sure that the program is working. As long as the program is working, it's not much, the guarantee is just there. As long as you continue to operate within the range, we have synergistic involved in the active monitoring through that program. It seems a little redundant. And so we wanted to make sure, though, that we had a good 3 years in the Schneider program to make sure we are, that is truly generating savings. And at what point we can then potentially look to remove that monitoring service and do a synergistic in place.
Okay, so that matches the $103,000 purchase order is greater than $25,000. Okay.
Well, they presented the savings stuff 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
I've slept since then.
Me too.
Any further discussion?
I move to accept that item C on the consent agenda.
Motion, Mr. Sullivan, second. Second by Mr. Howard. Any further discussion?
Do we need to add E to that also?
We're gonna take it one at a time.
Okay, one time.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item C passes. Item D, purchases exceeding $25,000.
Yeah, there were a number of large ones. One Chromebooks and carts, and classroom projectors, 300,000, some new labs, 630. That's all from the bond, right?
Correct. Those RFPs were approved. It's just now the purchase order.
I move to approve item D.
Made by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Howard. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Reports. Preliminary state assessment.
Yes, sir. Mr. Whitehead's tall. Good evening. In accordance with policy EK Local, I'm presenting the preliminary state assessment results for 2014. There we go. The starting point for state accountability is the state assessment system. STAR tests are aligned with post-secondary readiness and supporting standards of the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, our curriculum. Using STAR performance, we're able to measure a student's mastery of the TEKS, 4 core subjects of reading, ELA, mathematics, science, and social studies. Since all post-secondary readiness standards are measured on the STAR, the assessment measures a student's college and career readiness. When gaps emerge between current performance and post-secondary readiness, districts are expected to support campuses in efforts to close those gaps. To evaluate the effectiveness of those efforts, we look at student achievement on a variety of measures, including grades, unit exams, benchmark assessments, and state assessment. To help districts and campuses quantify student growth, student progress toward post-secondary readiness is measured by comparing scale scores from one year to the next on the state assessments. A student who meets or exceeds the difference between scale scores in a subject is said to have met or exceeded the student progress measure. BISD and our campuses are accountable for the post-secondary readiness of all students as measured by state assessments. Accountability is different from assessment. Assessment is the instrument, and accountability is a rating based on the 4 indexes that measure not only student achievement as in years past, but is now based on student progress, closing performance gaps, and post-secondary readiness. Many things can influence how a student performs from year to year on state assessments. A rigorous curriculum framework that is aligned with state expectations is the most important influence. Without an aligned curriculum, students are not prepared to meet the standards on state assessments. Also, the fidelity in which a campus or teacher follows the curriculum can influence performance. The assessment itself can be an influence on performance. The rigor and quality of the tests have changed annually, and this year specifically we know that the tests in reading were more difficult. The tests are not the same each year. Teachers yield perhaps the greatest influence on students. We're blessed at BISD to have dedicated teachers who care about their students and want to see them succeed. Teachers play a vital role in influencing a student's readiness to assess. Teacher quality, as well as the relationship the teacher has with students, can influence performance. As noted, many times of late, the demographics of the Brazosport area are changing and changing rapidly. With changes in demographics come new opportunities to understand the culture of our student population and to make adjustments to how we deliver instruction that addresses their varied needs. As we adjust to those changes in the classroom, we positively influence the performance of students on state assessments. Students also influence how they perform on state assessments. Our students are growing up in a society that is much more fast-paced than what most of us knew, and they are exposed to more information than any of us could have ever imagined. With their electronic devices fused to the palms of their hands, they can access more information in less time than in any time in history. They learn differently and must be taught differently than their teachers and parents. In addition, their performances on state exams are greatly influenced by their social, emotional, and physical state at the time of the test. Lack of sleep, food, family support, etc., all can impact a child's academic success. And finally, the size of the school can have an influence on how student performance impacts accountability. The lower population of students in those schools means that percentages used to measure indexes and the system safeguards can change dramatically based on the performance of just a few students. If we compare two of our elementary campuses, you can see that Griffith Elementary tested 123 students, and Austin tested 32. Now, hypothetically, if 10 students did not meet standard at both campuses, this would equate to 8% of the students at Griffith and 31% of Austin not meeting standard, resulting in a 92% passing rate at Griffith and a 69% passing rate at Austin. Equals not equal on state exams. Therefore, the size of the campus matters significantly. So we turn our attention now to reviewing our performance results. First, let me review a couple of terms with you. When I highlight improvements, I'll be highlighting areas where student performance improved district-wide. When I highlight opportunities, I'll be highlighting our opportunities to improve student performance. Every year, in every district, there will always be improvements and opportunities. 63% of BISD third grade students met the performance standard in mathematics and 72% in reading. Those improvements include a 1% increase in overall math achievement, math scale scores that improved by 13 points, a 3% increase in students reaching advanced in math, and a 10% increase in students reaching advanced in reading. With a 5% decrease in the reading performance of ESL and special education populations, we have an opportunity to improve performance in those areas next year. Didn't come up? I'm sorry. % of fourth grade students met standards in mathematics, 71% in reading, and 66% in writing. Improvements included math and reading showing growth from the prior year, a 5% increase in students reaching advanced levels in math, and a 6% increase in left writing, and 10% increase in ESL writing. We have the opportunity to grow writing performance throughout the district. In 2014-15, we will incorporate balanced literacy district-wide with year 3 of the TXRS rollout and begin implementing writing across curriculum. 77% of fifth grade students met standard in mathematics, 79% in reading, and 60% in science. Reading performance was 3% above the state average. Improvements included in fifth grade, overall math performance improvement of 4%. Reading and science both improved by 1%. A 10% improvement in the lab math performance. A 12% improvement, these are not coming up, and I apologize. I think they clicker down. We may have to do it. Jonathan, you mind clicking on those? Let's see if it'll click. Could you? I apologize. Okay, let's move restart. I can continue. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break. We'll cycle back. Cycle back through it. If you didn't get it the first time, this is a golden opportunity to get it the second time. That's an opportunity. That's exactly right, Mr. Howard. Thank you. Maybe I can catch what it was said, Doctor. If any of this looks familiar, feel free to try and finish. There's Griffith. There's Austin. Well, that's what you're talking about. Okay. So this program did not do too well, but that's okay. We're at fifth grade. So let's move on to fifth grade. All right. Now we're at fifth grade, and we'll see if this will work this time. So 77% of fifth grade students met standard in mathematics, 79% in reading, and 60% in science. And reading performance was 3% above the state average. We're going to try this again. Improvements include, and there it is, overall math performance improved by 4%. Reading and science both improved by 1%. We saw a 10% improvement in LEP math performance, a 12% improvement in special education math performance, a 15% improvement in ESL reading, and a 42% improvement in ESL math. We have the opportunity to grow the advanced level of performance in fifth grade students in science next year. And isn't that a great opportunity? When we're looking at growing advanced, that's a great thing. Now to sixth grade. 62% of sixth grade students met standard in mathematics and 71% in reading. Improvements in sixth grade performance include a 4% increase in reading and math from the prior year, a 10% improvement in reading and 11% improvement in math for our African American students, an 18% improvement in LEP reading, and a 12% improvement in at-risk reading. We have an opportunity to grow the advanced performance of sixth grade students in reading in the next year. So kudos to our middle schools for the work that they did with our fifth and sixth graders. Seventh and eighth grade were where we have some of our best opportunities for growth. However, the state also showed declines of 4% in seventh grade math and 2% in reading and math at the eighth grade level, indicating the difficulty of those tests. 55% of students met standard in seventh grade math, while 70% met standard in reading and 60% in writing. Improvements include a better than 4% improvement in advanced performance in reading, a 6% improvement in LEP reading, a 9% improvement in ESL reading, a 5% improvement in at-risk reading, a 24% improvement in special education reading, and a 10% improvement in special education writing. While we have the opportunity to improve performance in all three tested subjects, it should be noted that consistent with all of the performance slides shown so far, students who were targeted for interventions that were consistent with our PBMAS staging this past year that we had, and that were part of our district targeted improvement plan, showed gains. And some of the gains were very significant. I think that's very significant. So, our lack of curriculum alignment impacted performance district-wide, and we're looking forward to beginning the 2014-15 school year fully aligned for the first time in several years. As mentioned with the previous slide, statewide reading performance for eighth grade students declined by 2%. Our students performed 4% above the state average of 86%. In mathematics, the 79% performance was equal to the state. 60% of our eighth grade students met standard in science and 57% met standard in social studies. We saw a 10% increase in African American math, a 7% increase in LEP math, a 5% increase in ESL math, and a 4% increase in at-risk math. Through improved curriculum alignment, we have the opportunity to improve eighth grade performance in all subjects. 2 years ago, we began to implement the TSRS curriculum framework for the Brazosport High School feeder pattern. After 2 years of implementation, we have an opportunity to see the impact that that implementation has had on improving parity between our two high schools. This is the first year our students have taken U.S. history, and we're thrilled with their success. 89% of Brazosport and 90% of Brazosport students met standard. Something to note is that this group of students, the same group of students, took the world history exam, which is no longer in existence, last year. If we compared their performance for world history to U.S. history at both campuses, you would see significant gains, with 40% improvement in performance at Brazosport High School and an 18% improvement at Brazosport High School. This occurred thanks to the outstanding efforts of the Brazosport and Brazosport U.S. history teachers. We saw improved performance at both high schools in biology. 90% of Brazosport and 92% of Brazosport students met standard this year. This chart illustrates the growth of both campuses since the inception of STAR. Brazosport High School has improved their performance by 11% in the last 2 years. % of students at both high schools met standard on the Algebra 1 exam. When the perfect 100% performance of each of our intermediate schools. So congratulations to the intermediate schools, not one child did not pass the Algebra 1. I'm proud of it. It's outstanding. So when we factor in that 100%, our Algebra 1 district performance was 82%. This is the first year both campuses equaled the score of each other. Both campuses improved their performance over last year. Yeah, it is. It's exciting. Especially for data geeks. Last year was the first year that the English 2 EOC was administered. Brazosport's low performance on the English 1 and English 2 EOC exams last year was the primary reason they were improvement required. 60% of Brazosport and 73% of Brazosport students met standard on the English 2 EOC exam. While both high schools improved their English 2 performance, Brazosport High School's dramatic improvement from 37% in 2013 to 60% in 2014 was due in large part to the work of English Department Chair Jane Wallace and her team of English teachers as they implemented balanced literacy with fidelity and provided timely interventions to struggling students. Outstanding work. Our students continue to steadily improve their performance on the English 1 EOC exam. 59% of Brazosport and 70% of Brazosport students met standard on the English 1 EOC. The performance of both high schools continues to improve, with Brazosport posting a 7% gain and Brazosport a 16% gain. Brazosport High School has improved student performance by 20% on English 1 since the beginning of the STAR testing. The lack of parity between our affluent and less affluent students was noted in the curriculum audit. As you can see from the high school performance graphics, our efforts to improve the curriculum are beginning to bring parity to the two high schools. While we still have a lot of work to do to bring about parity at all levels, the comparison of our two high schools over the last 3 years indicates that we're on the right track. So how does VISD compare? Well, we do not have data from every district since it is preliminary and some districts have not released their scores. However, it is important to note that comparisons should only be made with great care from district to district for a number of reasons. First, you're comparing apples to oranges. Diversity, size of district, and a variety of factors prevent a true comparison. Secondly, we are all working towards the same goal, and comparison indicates competition. When we're not trying to outperform other districts, we all want students in all districts to succeed. Now, what I can provide for you is a comparison to districts with similar size and demographics as VISD that were willing to share their results with us. So all we have at this time are some EOC comparisons. And so the districts you're about to see, and I'm going to put them up now, this graphic, are Alvin, Brazosport, Dickinson, and New Caney. We all have similar student populations, we all have similar demographics, and we all have similar low SES populations. And as you can see in this graphic, each of the districts perform relatively the same in comparison to the state with each other. Give y'all a second to kind of look at that one. Clearly, there are opportunities for us to improve student performance, but the steps we've taken as a district this year, as demonstrated by the numerous improvements listed above, show that we're on the right track. Campuses began the process of using current performance data to plan for next year, even before school ended this year. Many of them will meet over the summer to develop targeted improvement plans that will focus their campuses on the right work to improve student performance. I met with representatives from each of the campuses' data analysis teams, the district leadership team and central office to review performance data and set the district targeted improvement goals on May 23rd. The mood was upbeat as we enthusiastically analyzed student performance, discussed our findings, noted trends, identified needs, and set attainable goals to help move our district forward. I'm optimistic about next year as I look at what has been accomplished this year. We aren't where we want to be, but we are well on our way. This time I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding student performance. Yes, sir.
Are the campuses, the Brazowood feeder pattern campuses and the Brazosport feeder pattern campuses, are they collaborating at all to discuss the improvements that each one has made and how we could become improved as a district, on the district as a whole?
We did that at the district level at the May 23rd meeting. Every campus sent representatives to the meeting. So I had representation from all of the campuses and I had representation from some of our departments here within this building. So it really was a collaborative effort to analyze the data.
And sharing
Yes.
the different...
Yes. Now, as far as sharing from campus to campus for their own individual performance, I can't say that that necessarily has happened at this time, Mr. Damian. But I can say that in looking at the district performance, it was all of us together looking at the data together. We left no stone unturned. We did everything.
And is this a reason, Dr. Secretary, McCoy, that we are looking at you said model lesson plans, the ones that work, we're going to use them, and okay, that's one of the purposes of that.
We want to have a customized model lessons. We want to be able to, we have some great lessons. We want to add technology to it. We want everything there for the teachers as a resource that they can utilize if they so choose.
I would like to just make one little note that of the 25 assessments that were given across the grade levels altogether, as a district, we improved in 16 of those. We improved from prior year in 16 of those assessments, and that's not counting the two in U.S. history compared to world history last year. If we counted those two, it would be an additional 2 improvements. So I think that is definitely something to celebrate, something to be proud of, and something that we really need to applaud our students, our teachers, and our administrators for the hard work they put in making that happen, because that is a huge achievement. And I don't think anyone realizes what an accomplishment that is. So, way to go. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
These are composite scores, right?
The composite scores, yes.
6th and 7th grade. So my question, as I asked last year, if you took the 6th grade scores of Brazowood and the 6th grade scores of Brazosport, they wouldn't be the same.
Well, talking about 6th grade alone, they're not going to be the same from any campus, Mr. Silvas. They're going to vary from campus to campus. And they're going to vary from subject to subject, and they're going to vary from subpopulation
And
to
I'm interested in the
subpopulation.
variation of those by grades.
Right, I understand what you're asking. What I can tell you is that there were gains on all campuses. There were some campuses that you're not going to see a significant gain because they were already performing at a pretty high level. You're going to have other campuses, though, where we had some very significant gains because these campuses had low performance a year ago and really began to right the ship in this year. I think the important graphic in all of this was the parity piece with Brazosport and Brazowood because it is reflective of what is going on over on the Freeport side of the river. We are working as a district towards that level of parity at a pace that really is amazing. And to me, it's exciting to see that. I understand your question and where you're coming from on that, but it's difficult to align. And you remember when he talked about aligning district to district, it's also that way in aligning campus to campus because campus demographics are very different. So what we have to look at is where did they start and where did they go by the end of the year? How far did we bring them? And those gains for many of those schools were very significant. Well, not all schools enjoy gains in every area.
I understand that.
Yes, sir.
I understand that.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to hear about composite scores. I want to see individual scores of classes. That's what I'm interested in.
Sure, I understand.
And I'll talk to you about it.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Mr.
Yes,
President.
Mr. Allen.
I'm only 45, but my understanding of all of my school was 70 was passing and below 70 was failing. But, I mean, I see a lot of our numbers aren't necessarily above 70%. I mean, am I comparing apples and oranges here and how this testing is done? I mean, is 70, is that still the line that we're looking at?
No, it's not. It varies from test to test, Mr. Howard. And this year, we were still in what they call phase in one of the final. Well, they have a passing standard they'll eventually get to called final level 2. And level 2 is the passing standard in the STAR testing environment. Level 3 being advanced. And we're still at the phase in level, and that phase in level really varies. There's huge variation that is there.
Subject.
Yes, subject to subject. It can range anywhere from 37% up as high as 58% in phase in 1 alone. So it really depends on the subject and what you would be seeing. So, you know, yeah, it would be in a sense comparing apples and oranges. It really has to be. It's really it is a criterion reference test. You got the scale score that you work off of from year to year. We talked about the difficulty level of the test, especially in the 8th grade and the 7th grade. And another indicator was the reading, where literally, and I hadn't seen this before, we had up to 4% difference in what the raw score percent would have been last year versus this year. This year, it was lower because the test was far more rigorous. So it's really the scale score that is the measurement. We'll eventually phase up, though, to where it's closer to a 70% standard, but that'll be another 3 years off.
But those percentages, those weren't grades.
No, those percentages were
percent of students.
that met standard. That is correct. Yes, sir. That is correct. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have preliminary budget assumptions and anticipated expenditures.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to provide preliminary budget assumptions and anticipated expenditures in accordance with board policy CE local. Kind of went over some of this earlier on a preemptive question, but I'm happy to go over it again. The budget tax rate adoption schedule is what we're living by in order to meet our requirements. As you can see, the first page of it is a lot of what happens at the campus and department level up until through May. Obviously, now school is out. Some areas are wrapping up. So we want to make sure we have all the input from teachers prior to them leaving. So which is why it's crammed into the first or second semester prior to school letting out. We've made a great deal of progress today. Campuses and departments have really worked hard to provide a needs-based budget. We moved from the Sally approach, or same as last year, to a zero-based budget. It has each campus and department truly analyzing their needs to develop a budget to meet those needs. It's been painful in some cases, a lot of work, obviously, as Mr. Atkins mentioned, zero-based budgeting is difficult and does require a lot of thought into what's happening and what the needs would be, analyzing data earlier than anticipated or in previous years. So it has been a change, and we appreciate all the efforts that have been made by those campuses and departments. The good thing is that we are actually ahead of schedule. If you look at when we're supposed to have had a compensation plan approved, we originally had that July. Yay, we're in June and we already have a compensation plan. Really helps to implement that plan so that we can get all our information in our software up to date, reflecting those changes, because I know there's about 1,600 employees off to get updated, so it's a time-consuming process. So we appreciate that, and the HR and business office, I'll say thank you on their behalf. Once we're done with the workshop, many of the tough decisions will be made, and the rest of the adoption process will be more compliance in nature, which is primarily logistical, trying to get everything finalized. So July 22nd, where we have we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But once we get through July, we'll be pretty well good on our budget, and then the rest of it will be just the adoption process, which will take us all the way to August 26th. Just since there is a new face on the board, it's always nice for him to know what the various roles are. Like I said, we did kind of discuss this earlier, but there's a number of people involved: site-based committee, which is the budget committee, campus principal, central office administrator, superintendent, and ultimately the school board. The school board, we established the guiding principles for budget development, review the budget by functional category, approve district staffing ratios, compensation plan, and then provide the publication and conduct the public hearings to discuss both the budget and tax rate. And ultimately adopting the budget for three funds: general fund, debt service, and child nutrition. Obviously, we want to maintain a fund balance to approximate optimum fund balance. And in the unfortunate situation where we don't have adequate funds, the board would have to declare financial exigency, which we're not in that situation, thank God. We did that a few years ago, and that wasn't a very fun time. I think that was when Mason came on. So. Way to go, Mason. Mason has seen the spectrum so far. Just to recap, this slide should look very familiar to most of you, but as we move forward, it's always good to have a refresher of where we stand for the current year. Ended last year, August 2013, audited number, general fund had $29.4 million in fund balance.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, yes, thank you. The original budget called for a $1.4 million deficit. We used to call this the next line item contingencies. Renamed it to hopefully be a little clearer. It's budgeted undesignated expenditure. So in the past, or current year, we had $3.4 million built into the budget that we did not have identified for expenses. It allows for unknowns. It allows for cushion in the budget, and it's about 3%.
Unallocated, sure.
Okay. All right. I'll change it. I'll consider that for. I like it. I like shorter.
Surprised it wouldn't be UE or something.
Yeah, well, I didn't go with an acronym this time. And so that left us with an estimated actual surplus of $1.9 million if all other budgeted funds were spent. Well, as you know, WADA has decreased for the year, about 133. That varies from week to week. We should have a finalized number here pretty soon. That reduced revenues by about $670,000. We did have pockets of additional cost, additional growth that pushed the numbers above the 22-to-1, which we couldn't get waivers. That has required 7 additional elementary teachers, about $300,000. And PSPs, there's an acronym, professional service providers for academic intervention of $163,000. And then the health incentive that was discussed earlier today in K-12 Insight was roughly $2 million. So we're looking at a revised estimated actual deficit if all other funds, all other budgeted items are spent, which typically are not. It would be $1.2 million in the whole. So 29.4 million minus 1.2 would give you what an estimate of what we're looking at having this year if all costs are spent. The budget development status, there is a. Obviously, the campus department meetings have taken place. Business Services has provided an overview of all the new forms. Why the new approach? Well, it fosters a curriculum program-centered budget. I mean, it's why we're here. And there was a curriculum audit finding that we're implementing this year. It does provide that multi-level involvement to strengthen the understanding of the budget process. We even had APs this year wanting to be involved with it. We had an AP budget committee that they formed on their own to get a better understanding. We provided information to them, and then they ended up reporting back to the APs so that they can help on the campus level. They're trying to grow themselves and become the principal roles. They want to have an idea of what's going on in the budget, so it has to help them along the way and provides additional resource on campus that has some knowledge of budget development. And then last week I had a heart attack when the estimated certified taxable values came in from the Missouri County Tax Office, which were magically $400 million lower than I anticipated, which prompted a number of calls, companies trying to figure out who reported what and why is it different from what we had back in February, because I had already made those calls and had to recall. And come to find out, one plant did start after January 1st. It's amazing the sensitivity to funding. When one plant is delayed, well, when it's that big of a plant, ended up being an $852 million plant. And obviously at January 1st, it was only reported at half the value because it hadn't started. We anticipated a $722 million plant being in place. So, as I mentioned, it's 18% greater overall cost. We just won't see that money until next year, until 15-16 school year. It's based on appraised values as of January 1st. So, minor detail. So, you may ask, why would your CFO say, or Chief Business and Governmental Affairs Officer say, yes, adopt a big deficit budget? Well, it's simply because in the 15-16 school year, 13-14, looking at about $83 million of state and property tax revenue, along with the $50,000 supplemental payment from the current 313 agreement. Pretty flat for 14-15. Actually have a slight decrease in revenue. But here's a big bump. And you can see here, local taxes really go up. That's not a base function of the rate. It's all a function of those plants coming online. So the rate's flat, values go way up, generate a significant amount of additional revenue for that year. So $5.6 million additional amount of revenue for 15-16. So which is why we have a fund balance. We can cushion that 1 year. As we move forward, you'll see actually in the handout the anticipated deficit, that revenue surplus or additional revenue will cover the deficit that we're adopting this year. So let's look at what the handout shows. It's divided up into, we always want to be optimistic. We put reduction in expenses first. And then we come into the increases in expenses, and we just divided that up into various sections. Obviously, employee compensation and benefits is the largest portion of the budget. 84% of our budget is based on people. We're a service industry. Clearly, staffing allocations affect that. Safety and security for high priority items, teaching and learning, obviously, that's what we're here to do. Extracurricular programs, there was obviously concerns in making sure those are funded properly based on activities that are occurring. And operational improvements along with maintenance and operations. And then with the last item in the areas include revenue, summary, and then the prioritized levels. So it's in the handout. I tried to, last year was 1 page, we're now on to 2 this year, or 1.5, so not too bad. But as far as the reduction items, 2 of the things we talked about last time, workers' comp, we've been able to decrease the cost there due to lower claims over the last few years. Student accident insurance is one program we're actually eliminating out of the budget along with the fee. So no more activity fee for people. They can choose to purchase insurance on their own if they want. They hopefully already have insurance through the various opportunities. In fact, it's to the point where it's becoming a requirement. Individual line items, UIL fees are lower, or the budget amounts were too high, so we reduced it down to actual cost. A small vandalism, property and lot. This is the first in a while. Property insurance actually decreased, so we're able to decrease the budget there by $100,000. Technology services is coming through their budget with all the various bond initiatives. We've been able to replace so much equipment. Various services are being provided. We've been able to cut $100,000 out of there. Custodial staffing changes was actually implemented in 13-14 based on a study from last year. Department did a great job of being able to trim down those areas and implement according to the study. That's saving us about $200,000. InfoSnap is the third-party software. We're hoping to be able to eliminate that if we can get a programmer position approved. With the move to electronic processes throughout the district and trying to streamline our approaches, we're relying so heavily on software that it is becoming a problematic not to have somebody on staff to actually help with those transitions and implementing the various components of that. Online enrollment is a prime example of something that is desperately needed. It really helps our community whenever they are enrolling. Who wants to get a packet of papers 15 times or four times from different campuses to get 4 kids? Providing that online opportunity would be a huge benefit. And the list goes on and on about the various technologies that we're implementing. It's just difficult to do it without having a dedicated program or position to basically work on that on our behalf. But solely rely on a third party is somewhat problematic. And then reducing that unallocated, undesignated budget expenditures from 3.4 to 1 million. So it's not going to be the cushion in the budget as it was in years past. Really trimming that down. The compensation plan that was adopted, thank you this evening, I already had it in there. I was optimistic. But it's 2.8 million. And then the TRS, this is a required law, which is why it's a category 1. We're required to contribute another 1.5% to TRS on our employee's behalf. That's a $778,000 cost. And they pay for it for 1 year, which I've included in the numbers as far as projections for next revenue numbers for next year. Long-term disability program, $150,000. The additional staffing to date varies for elementary. So this is additional campus support, helping those class sizes shrink. From elementary level, 22 to 1. There's another $425,000 we're pumping into those elementary campuses to accommodate that, along with pre-K of 18 to 1. Additional support from an AP level, various campuses, $180,000. Organization restructure, which was discussed last month with Dr. Alachka, $467,000. There's that programmer number that I mentioned. If we put it as a category 3, have to have, but it would be very promising in the future if we're going to continue to implement new technologies. AEC additional staff to provide that early intervention, $200,000. Health science, obviously CTE is a growing, with House Bill 5, there's so many more avenues that children can take. The CTE numbers are going to go up as a result of that, which is it's aligning with the need. 3 additional security officers. Supplies for those officers, fuel. As far as teaching and learning.
What are the salaries?
It's 165 divided by 3, so I'm not sure.
165,000 divided by 3?
Yep. What are the 40s? I can't do that in my head. Anybody got a calculator? I don't rely on it. Roughly a little over 50,000. Yes, that I concur. 55.
I just watch all that stuff.
Yeah, and I was trying to do it in my head, but it wasn't working. Did not compute. Professional service providers, that's also a requirement. That all depend on where we are with school improvement. Number could go down or up. 211,000, we're hoping on the downside. There's the campus allocations that we mentioned. 5% increase, and then also differentiates between the smaller campuses. That's $42,000 of additional support. CTE program budget, here's another big item, is the CTE program. Really taking that into a centralized approach of what do you need as a supplemental. Before it was really handled at the campus level, and they're having to use their campus allocations for it. And that's not really what their campus allocation was designed for. So the campus allocation is for basic items in a classroom. The program budget is supposed to be for the additional items, as Denise mentioned, the icing. It's the additional money needed for those programs, above and beyond toner for a printer or those type of things that are basic to a class. So this is really going to help with that, where before it was basically a lot of, I don't say zagging, but a lot of support through requests from area companies, which have been very generous in their donations, which not mean that we're not going to stop asking, but it means at least they have some money in there in case we don't get it. RTI, return to intervention. Clearly, early intervention is the key. 107,000 there. there for additional, for testing related to those students. Web-based health master program, again, for the special ed, AVID program. And as far as extracurricular programs, the fine arts, that's a significant number, nearly 300,000 for fine arts programs. There was, Danny, if we want to elaborate on that one, feel free, but it was a very cumbersome process of going through each. It basically comes down to how many programs you want to fund. If you're going to fund them, if you're going to say we're going to participate in this many programs, here's the cost associated with that. And this is the number that it came out to be.
This was, finally funded accurately.
Yeah. It was funny, between the campuses, we had, let's see, just for example, Bewood band, Beeport band. Amount per student. Beeport is $200 per student. Bewood, $200.09. So pretty darn close. It was 9 cents per student. So it was a rounding difference. But the equitable allocation of funds is something that, without doing it at a district level, it's very hard to achieve when you have individual campuses doing it. This was in coordination with the district, with campus efforts, because they were involved in coming up with these numbers. And it was nice to be able to finally come up with something and have it on paper and say, hey, the budget is equitable per student. So it was really per program. So fine arts, capital replacement, we really want to push, and I want to emphasize, major maintenance, capital replacement, anything that qualifies for a bond-related item. It would be a good idea to put those in future bonds, build that into future bonds, including capital replacement, similar to what we did for instruments right now, but continue to build on that in future years. Let's expand that beyond instruments, risers, things like that we can capitalize and can legally be purchased with a bond. It saves this general fund dollars, which are so limited. Athletic budget, they also did the same exercise, it's about $93,000, and they had a capital replacement. The capital replacements that they're asking for are immediate needs. In the future, we want to do a long-term look and see what can we replace on an ongoing basis with potential bond-related items. AEDs, those are expensive batteries, and they were funded with, actual AED was funded a number of years ago, but it's one of those things where the state funds it initially, getting you a piece of equipment, but then fails to provide any money for maintaining the equipment. If you want it to actually work, instead of hanging on the wall, you have to purchase the batteries. On election costs, clearly we're looking to, hopefully, based on long-range facility planning and recommendation there, potentially could have an initial election next year, which would be in November. This accommodates that. Human expenditures, programs that we're currently utilizing in HR, the board approved it in the current year. This would be to fund it again next year. Card readers, so on and so forth. K-12 insights included in there. Maintenance and operations, there's some legal changes for TCEQ, about $3,500. And then trying to develop a chemical waste disposal annual amount of $2,500 instead of letting it build up. So next page, that's all the expenditures that we've looked at as far as changes from last year. Tax revenue, that number used to be $6 million of growth. Column on the right. Column on the left is only 1.9 million. That's where that big sinking feeling came last week. And so instead of having a $3.8 million anticipated additional revenue, we have about $150,000 less in revenue. So bottom line, we had total amount needed. We'll have potentially, this is subject to change, about an adopted deficit of roughly $4.8 million, of which a million of it is undesignated, so in reality, probably about $4 million actually needed from fund balance for 14-15 school year. The big questions are always what's not in there. We we did have some requests that came through that were capital in nature. Paint jobs for buses, transportation maintenance trucks, and vehicles for new officers. We think that would be better fit for a future bond. We've discussed it with the departments, and the new officers would be a fixed location for those officers. Immediately to have the vehicles, they felt it was more important to have people stationary on those campuses, and then look at the future for if we needed to rotate around. So overall, increases in revenues are delayed until 15-16. We'll need roughly $4 million of fund balance to cover the anticipated expenditures next year. The 15-16 budget will have an additional $5 million under current law. There is a legislative session coming up, and the political climate isn't the greatest for public ed, but we'll see what happens. And then in 18-19, we've talked about the 313 agreements quite a bit, and we haven't seen really any big dollars yet, and that's really when the dollars will start kicking in. So any use of fund balance now will easily be replaced in those years. Just in summary, we got a general fund operating expenditure of roughly $94.4 million. It's a $3.4 million over actual identified expenses, which is about 3.8%. If you back out that $2.4 million change in the undesignated amounts, about a 6.4% increase in identified expenditures. Obviously, you got a 4% increase in pay. That's going to cover the biggest portion of it. 84% of our cost is tied up in salary. So I'll be happy. The proposed workshop, we were originally looking at the 22nd. I have a scheduling conflict. I would like to request move date to July 15th, move it up a week.
We can discuss that in a second. We've got a team building session to schedule, and so we'll look at that date. My plan was maybe do our team building on the 22nd and do the budget workshop too.
Okay. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You anticipate interest in sinking rate to go down?
It potentially could. We do have another we have $14 million of our 2012 bond that we have not sold yet. So depending on the numbers there, when we talk the timing of when we sell it, our goal has been to try to keep it fairly flat. But the revenues, legally, we're only allowed to set a tax rate based on what's needed for that fund. So it'll depend on the timing to sell those additional bonds. It also depend on if we decide to move forward and the voters did approve something in November, we were going to have some potential there, have that built into the budget as well. Clearly, we can't levy something that's not approved, but consideration of that. We want to avoid ups and downs of rate. Just creates a havoc for individual taxpayers complaining why. Our goal was to try to keep it flat, just a little bit decline, but overall managing that as best we can to avoid fluctuations.
So we'll need to dip into the general fund $4 million.
That'll put us about 24. Yeah, it's tough pill to swallow. It's knowing that the revenues will be there next year is the only comforting thing. If it was a sustainable type situation, that would be up here, or I guess it could be up here, but it would be difficult to promote any large changes in compensation. The good thing is we have the 313 agreements, supplemental revenue going to be coming in future years. So it's really a timing. How long can we, with this, if the wouldn't have a shift in that one plant, we would find we would break each budget again. But timing and all this planning we've already done, now we're planning to be there the following year. That's what fund balance is there for. We're going to have years like this where we have the revenues don't quite make it because of timing issues that are outside of our control. I hate fund balance ever, but if we didn't ever use it, it would always go up. So we eventually be to the point where you're hoarding money. But that's the reason we have the fund balance to help with these dips. But yeah, it's about $4 million a year.
I can tell you
stable?
13 more based on the demographic study.
13 more?
13 more students more. That's what goes to the budget. Put it one per campus. One per grade level. Yeah, I'm in grade level now. Yeah, it's the growth, demographic growth was projections were really later, future years. So what's included in the estimated numbers for state revenue are this year plus 13.
That Foundation Prep Academy is anticipating 35 students in special ed.
Any more questions for Mr. Schaefer?
So it is good. I think Andy talked about it a lot, and we all talked about it. Cabinet is nice to be able to in the opposite mode of what we were a few years ago. Facing us all with that of reduction, that gets kind of old. But
I remember that was less than $7 million.
less than five.
Less than 5. Huge. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Last agenda item, board committee reports, which I'm not aware if they're worded. So with that, work session discussions.
Board President, we need to set a date for the board team building and work session. Typically, this is a required 3-hour training for the board. With the budget workshop, the conflict, I would like to recommend that we put the board team building on July 22nd at 5:30 to 8:30, and then move the budget workshop to July 15th, same time, 5:30, hopefully not until 8:30, but maybe. And so 7:15, the July 15th for the budget workshop, and July 22nd for the board team building. Does that work with everyone's calendars?
Those are on the dates. You had in our packet.
Good with that? And there may be a need, based on the resignation of Mr. Frizzell, there will be a need for us to call a special meeting at some point in the next week or so for us to discuss next steps as it relates to that, and for the board to make a decision regarding the acceptance of that resignation. So please check your email for potential dates and times for that. With that, I'll turn it back over to President Monroe.
Next agenda item is campus planning carousel.
At this time, I'd like to dismiss the campus principals to room D7 for the campus planning carousel. We're all excited about our campus planning carousel, and we look forward to the opportunity for campuses and board members to discuss the strengths and needs of campuses and key goals and objectives accomplished this year. Members will have 3 minutes to ask any clarifying questions. We'll be moving to room D7 for the carousel. Each board member has been provided a notebook with the campus goals and objectives that you are welcome to bring with you. Each board member will be given an assigned table after approximately 12 minutes at each table. Also, time for each board member to move to the next table. Central office staff members assigned at each table to assist with movement around the room. Members of the audience are welcome to leave at this time or join us in room D7 to listen to campuses share with board members their campus plans. If you do join us, we ask that you please do not interrupt or ask questions during the carousel activity, as each campus has a limited time to share. Once everyone is settled in at their respective tables, I'll give a signal to begin. I do want to thank each board member for your willingness to participate in the carousel this evening. Are there any questions?
I have a trial in the morning. I got witnesses at 10.